maybe that was a false person. Maybe I'm not phony. Maybe I'm not just a piece of shit. Maybe I'm not as negative as I previously thought. Maybe I'm just broken.
Right.
And if I can see that, if I can step back and I can see that I'm broken and I need work, then maybe if I'm lucky, which I am, I can start a process of healing. And once that begins, then our identities can change, right? We can go from the old whatever that identity was, right? Because I had an identity on the streets too, of other like the cops didn't. They didn't see me the same way that my friends saw me.
Sure.
And nobody saw me the way that I saw me. And my mom saw me only the way that a mother can see her son, right? And so we can take away all those things from square one, right? So the way that I came to identify as an alcoholic was pretty simple, was listening to other alcoholics, right? And so I do the same thing with food.
Right.
And depression and fear, right? And so I take, how do I behave when I indulge in this thing, right? And so let's take food, for example. When I recognize myself as a compulsive overeater as well as an alcoholic. And the reason that I identify as that is because once certain food goes into my mouth, it creates an obsession. The obsession starts, right? And so I get a craving, I indulge in that craving, it creates an obsession. And once there's an obsession, right? Once the obsession in me is started, I act out compulsively generally, right? I did that with alcohol and drugs. I did that with food. I do that with basically anything that makes me change the way that I feel about myself for that moment. And so the good news was that other people identified that same way and they explained it to me that way.
Sure.
And then they explained a solution for it. And it took me a long time to hear the solution, but they explained the solution, for that one thing. And so we were talking before the podcast and you'd mentioned wiping the slate clean. Right. And so getting to a point where we're able to wipe the slate clean, right? Like, how do we get from all that destruction, all that disaster, to a point where we can step back and go, okay, I've done all those things, but I'm not all those things.
Right. Well, and I think it comes from having that gift of desperation. Like we don't have a choice.
Right.
Like we've seen where these decisions and identifying as this or that has ultimately led us, right? It's no longer serving us. And so in order to continue in a way where I'm allowed to thrive, I've got to disassociate myself with those previous false notions, right? Those previous ways of identifying and really just saying, okay, I don't know fuck about shit. Like I've just got to I think I know this or I think I know that. And it's like, it's not true. Obviously it's not true. Like the one thing that I can see based on the work that I'm doing is that maybe this one thing is true. In my case, it was that I was an alcoholic.
Yeah.
That one thing is true based on everything. And moving forward, I can sort of hold on to that. And like you said, like I'm a compulsive overeater too. Like that's a part of my repertoire. And as it is now, like I can still become all these defects of character when I give into that craving and the obsession kicks in, right? Like I now become selfish. I now become impatient. I now begin to isolate, and all these other defects of character come into the game. But I don't identify as those because ultimately I'm a compulsive overeater, and I've given in to the compulsion.
Right.
And so I'm now under the influence, and so my identity hasn't changed. It's just that currently I'm in that negative space.
Right.
So it's just like if I say I'm an alcoholic, well, I'm an alcoholic in recovery, right?
Right.
And so that means that, I'm hopefully I'm working a good program, and that means that I'm helping others. I'm recognizing these defects of character. I'm making amends immediately. I'm taking a solid inventory of myself, and I'm doing the work in those areas specifically, right?
Right.
But if I were to be drinking, it would still be the same thing. I'm still just an alcoholic. I just happen to be, an active alcoholic.
Yeah. Now you're living in all those defects of character.
Right,
Yeah.
right, exactly. Now I'm living in that negative space. So for me, it had to. I actually am extremely grateful that that's the one thing that I know about myself, and that it's everything else is flexible, man.
Good. Well put. Very well put.
Like everything else is maybe I am, maybe I'm not. Maybe I am fitness, savvy, maybe I'm not.
Right.
Maybe I'm, super healthy, maybe I'm not. Like
Right.
because I seem to be each one of those at different times.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But ultimately, like the one thing I know about myself is that I am an alcoholic, and I know that because I have years and years of evidence to show me that that's the case.
Yeah.